how these two are able to show down. Donald's got a really awesome team here. I think I mentioned earlier on that Gigantamax Grimmsnarl, really, really interesting Pokemon, but I really want to champion that Zapdos as well. It's one of my favorite Pokemon. And it can just deal so much damage. We've just seen how much flying and electric type Pokemon can do, and I really hope to see Zapdos be able to pull something just as spectacular out of the bag.
Yeah, definitely, Lou. And you know, the one thing I think this format missed before the release of the Crown Tundra was those electric and flying types. I mean, we sorely missed like really Thunderous, Zapdos, and we're seeing them put to such good use by our players here. So I undoubtedly can guarantee almost that we'll see Zapdos in this next set. I'm sure of it. So you won't be disappointed, Lou. But we'll move on to Marcus's team, who's got equally an interesting team. And another Pokemon that you pointed out earlier, Lou, in the recap of the players from their regions was that Regirock, and a very interesting Pokemon here. And if you look at Donald's team, there's not very much on his team that kind of handles the Regirock very well. You know, you've got the Urshifu there. It can do a nice job against it, but outside of that, you're going to be struggling to hit for super effective damage with no ground type, you know, attacker on your team. I mean, Glastrier probably does have Max Quake or, you know, the high horsepower that it carries, but it's a tough Pokemon to bring in front of a Regirock, and especially when it's paired next to something like Rotom Heat that can also pressure from the other side of the spectrum, you know. So going to be difficult, but both very interesting teams. And we can move over now to have a look at what these players have achieved throughout their careers. And you can see here Donald has already got a Collinsville Regional Top 32 this season as well, Lou. So that's a really nice finish and a really good start to this year for him as well. And then on the other side, we have Marcus with a lot of other great accomplishments here in the 2020 season. I'll pass it over to you to take these ones away, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Both of these players have come out in the 2020 season. This is when they're having their big breaks. You can see Donald's got it at a regional championships, top 32, and then Marcus is really making a name for himself over in Germany, you know, competing at all these different events at loads of different levels as well. You've got the Premier Challenges, the mid-season showdowns, the regionals as well, you know, attending Bochum regionals, competing in the MSS and getting top 16 there as well is certainly a formidable threat with the amount of players that were there. I mean, you and I were both there, Lee, as well, and it was a spectacular tournament. And as well, in the previous Players' Cup, you know, he was a qualifier with top 16, so he's got experience when it comes to these online tournaments. And if you're Marcus, you're going to want to try and capitalize on that advantage and bring it into your match. So I think from these two newcomers, we're certainly going to be educated a little bit in Pokemon, and it's always surprising to see how they're going to sort of play with their teams, because they can see often Pokemon with a really fresh set of eyes, and I want to see how they're going to pilot things. I want to see that the Grimmsnarls in action here, Lee. We've got one apiece, and I want to see which one's going to be victorious over the other.
Well, I mean, I would love to see the G-Max Snooze come out. It's one of my favorite Gigantamax signature moves. It's very, very cool move. But yeah, like you say, Lou, it's really nice to see these new players coming into the competitive scene and doing so well. And like you say, they always have a different eye for how games are meant to be played and how games in their mind are played. So it's always interesting as a viewer, and us in this privileged position now to actually view these players at their kind of highest peak and on their journey, maybe starting journey to their first championship. So yeah, like you say, they've got very interesting Pokemon both sides. I think it's a pretty even-ish matchup. I think there's answers to most Pokemon on both sides of the field. So it'll just come down to how the players are going to lead against each other and then kind of eke each other's ideas out in that first game and then take it into game 2 and potentially a game 3 if that's how far it goes.
Yeah, well, let's snooze on the stream no longer and jump into game 1 of this set between Marcus and Donald. You set it up for me, Lee. I couldn't not, let's be honest. We've got out on, I believe it's on Marcus' side of the field, indeed, with that Regirock and Kartana coming out in formidable physical force. And Donald's side, we've got the Urshifu and the Zapdos. Delighted to see the Zapdos here on action, but I do fear for a little bit when it is facing down against a Regirock. It doesn't want to take any of those rock-type attacks at all. Urshifu, of course, is still able to apply a lot of damage physically here. It is the Rapid Strike variant. So it's going to be able to deal out those water type attacks that Regirock is not going to want to take, but again has to worry about the Kartana on the opposing side of the field. Lots of triangles going on here, Lee.
Lots and lots of triangles, Lou. Like, you know, one of the things that Zapdos has access to normally is Heat Wave as well, which really pressures that Kartana. But do you want to keep the Zapdos in front on the field in front of that Regirock? You know, that's the thing. So there's lots of kind of counterplay here going on, and it's about maybe utilizing. It depends what the items are on the Pokemon as well. You know, the Urshifu here going to be a really good utility against that Regirock and kind of slowing that down if you are Donald. So you know, that might be an option to go down that route, but you've got to be so careful with your Zapdos if you are leaving it on the field in front of that Regirock.
Well, Markus making adjustments straight away in turn 1, gets Cortana off the field, maybe fearing that Heat Wave on the opposing Zapdos, and gets the Grimmsnarl here to start getting up to a few tricks. But Donald deciding to go straight on the offensive and Dynamaxing up the Zapdos. I absolutely adore to see this, and I wonder which moves he has locked into, because he's got a couple of options here, and it is risky. Facing down against a Regirock that is now Dynamaxing as well. Not something that the Zapdos wants to see at all, but it's going to be interesting to see whether the Urshifu can potentially provide the benefit of pressuring that Regirock enough to keep the Zapdos safe.
Yeah, that's the thing, you know, the Zapdos feels very threatened now. The Regirock going for that Dynamax, and even though the Zapdos has, it's going to fire off a big attack, but is the double up going to be enough to take down this Regirock in its Dynamax form? I really don't feel like it is, even with the Surgeon Strikes coming out, following up from this Max Lightning. The Regirock has one of the biggest attack stats in the entire game, so we're actually going to just say a close combat, so easily again able to take that, and there's always a risk hitting into it with a super effective attack. There we go, there it is, Lou, the weakness policy, boosting those attack stats, and really going to be maybe a turn where the Regirock is going to be able to take down that Zapdos in one hit, and what a return that would be for Markus, and maybe a little bit of a bad start here for Donald.
I'm so sad for that Zapdos, but that is definitely what you want to see if you're Markus. Your weakness policy getting activated before your Pokemon has had its chance to attack. Being able to deal a massive amount of damage with that Max Rockfall going down into the Zapdos removes Donald's Dynamax Pokemon from play instantaneously, and also gets to set up the residual damage from the Sandstorm as well. Of course, Grimmsnarl's now here as well. It can start getting up to a few tricks, and I think Donald's thinking along the same wavelength, brings in his Grimmsnarl as well, but it certainly puts Donald's at the disadvantage now, where he's lost his Dynamax. Although Regirock is at low HP, it's still going to be a formidable threat unless you target it down and remove it.
Yeah, and then you've got to worry about the opposing Grimmsnarl if you're Donald as well. That will set up screen support and really bolster those the defenses even further, making it even more difficult to take down, especially in its Dynamax form. So you've got ways with the Urshifu, if you're Donald, to hit the Regirock for good damage, but it's whether or not you're going to be able to get around potential fake out from the Grimmsnarl. There's a lot of mind games going on here, because Grimmsnarl has a lot of support utility moves that it can take advantage of, and at the moment, you know, does Markus's Grimmsnarl have access to fake out? That could be, you know, something that's playing on Donald's mind. It would maybe make him go down a certain route, a certain play here, because then you want to preserve the Urshifu for later on this game if that is the case.
Well, Markus going straight for the max guard there on the Regirock, and Scary Face actually coming out from his Grimmsnarl as well. Going to be lowering the stats there on the Urshifu, as the Grimmsnarl on Donald's side able to go for that reflect, so just protecting itself from taking any of those physical type moves from the Regirock just a little bit. You know, the weakness policy boost is certainly going to be hard to counter against. Yeah,
and the thing now is, if the Regirock can get an attack off onto either target the Urshifu or the Grimmsnarl, you know that the potential sash on an Urshifu has been broken. It's probably going to go down by these boosted attacks. It does resist the rock type attacks, but that's not the only thing that the Regirock has access to, you know, and the Grimmsnarl is pretty useless other than just providing that support here for Donald at the moment.
Exactly, going for a detect there on Donald's Urshifu. For another Scary Face, really trying to reduce the speed of this Urshifu dramatically to preserve Regirock. You know, it doesn't want to take another close combat there. Going to be able to go for the Max Rockfall, targeting down into the the Grimmsnarl there on Donald's side, but it's not enough to pick up the KO. The Reflect really coming in there well for Donald, just being able to preserve the Grimmsnarl a little bit longer. Urshifu, however, is going to be sitting a little bit precarious here.
Yeah, and these Scary Face drops that the Urshifu on Donald's side of the field are really getting inflicted onto it from this Prankster on the Prankster Grimmsnarl on Markus's side of the field are very strong, and kind of make you forced into a certain play if you are Donald, going for either the switch out to preserve it for later or an Aqua Jet like we're seeing now, because otherwise you know that you're going to go down. But we do see it pick up the knockout, surprisingly.
Yeah, Urshifu able to bypass all of the speed drops by going for that priority Aqua Jet, picks up the KO. But in retaliation, the Grimmsnarl on Markus' side going to be able to pick up the KO on the Grimmsnarl on Donald's side here. And again, I think this is the interesting thing with the Urshifu, as it is that Rapid Strike variant. It doesn't have the Dark typing. It's favoring Water and Fighting instead. Those Prankster type moves wouldn't affect a Dark type Urshifu. So just, you know, quite fortunate there for Markus to be able to have the Urshifu of his choice opposite, going for those Scary Faces. Porygon 2, however, going to join the field field for Donald. Pokemon that doesn't mind taking a scary face or two. It doesn't mind a slow environment if it wants to set up that Trick Room potentially. We'll get the special attack boost as well that Porygon 2s love to favor.
Yeah, and a really nice Pokemon here for Donald. You know, he's taken those speed drops, but he's got a way to kind of utilize those and take those and make them his advantage by protecting the Urshifu now, setting the Trick Room up. And I don't think that the Kartana is going to be able to take down this Porygon at 2 in one shot. It's such a defensively built Pokemon. You know, it's very, very capable of sticking around on the field. But not seeing a detect there from the Urshifu. It is just going to go down for Donald.
Yeah, and no taunt coming out from that Grimmsnarl, so Porygon 2 really in a safe position to go for this Trick Room and get the speed nice and slow up on Donald's side of the field. But there's certainly going to be a couple of challenges ahead for this Porygon 2. I mean, Donald's deciding not to protect up the Urshifu, maybe thinking it was too obvious, wants to try and pick up a cheeky KO against that Kartana, while the Porygon 2 is able to set up the Trick Room. But now Kartana with that Beast Boost as well, going to be able to deal a lot of damage to Porygon 2.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It probably has access to Sacred Sword, so we'll be hitting it super effective. And we don't know the item yet on Markus's Kartana, so if it is the Assault Vest, it's going to be able to take these attacks pretty well. And as you can see, that kind of is an indication that it is the Assault Vest there. And then with the additional support from the Grimmsnarl, with that Spirit Break, reducing the special attack stat on the Porygon 2 each turn ticking down, it's going to be very difficult for this Porygon 2, which in most situations can be a Pokemon that can kind of win a game by itself, but in this situation it feels a little bit too difficult for it. Markus done very well to mitigate the Dynamax threat from Donald early on.
Let's not hang around and jump straight into game 2 and see exactly how, if you are Donald, you are going to avoid the weakness policy going into this game. It's going to be a Grimmsnarl and Rotom lead coming out there from Markus. Donald going to be bringing the Zapdos and the Grimmsnarl out to the action, and this is certainly an environment Zapdos is going to be happier being in. Doesn't see a Regirock on the opposing side of the field. But Rotom is again a Pokemon that can provide a lot of difficulty. If it wants to go for something like a Nasty Plot, it's going to be in a position to do so with no sort of taunt coming out from the Grimmsnarl on Donald's side. It knows that it's going to be free to start boosting itself up, and then that could be a really key Dynamax Pokemon for Markus.
Yeah, I think the Nasty Plot here is the biggest threat straight away now. Does Donald have taunt? It doesn't look like he does because he's just switching that Grimmsnarl straight out here. The Zapdos not in the greatest position as well against that Rotom. So again, Markus leading very well into this game and covering maybe some of the other threats that could come out. But fair credit to Donald, you know, he's sticking with this Zapdos and he wants to utilize it up top. He's not worried about the Regirock in this game, and you know it's paying off from it's not on the field, but he does have another threat in that Rotom Heat to worry about. Can he get some airstream control here against this Grimmsnarl? That'll be the big thing, and if you can maybe get it close to a knockout and pick that up the next turn, that's going to put you in good stead.
Well, Zapdos going to go for the max airstream, targeting down into that Grimmsnarl. Going to do about 50% damage. The light screen really helping out here on Markus' side of the field. Zapdos and the Urshifu will be able to get the boost though. However, in terms of the speed, Zapdos can take a little bit of recoil from the Life Orb, as well as Rotom was able to go for the Nasty Plot. So Markus taking turn 1 to really think about the setup going into these next couple of turns. Nasty Plot boosted Rotom, and then you've also got the light screen by the Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, and now, you know, you've got your Urshifu on the field. It's in a nice position. It can start doing good offensive damage to this Rotom, but you would think Markus is probably going to go for a Reflect and probably Dynamax the Rotom. Now it has those nasty pop boosts, and one Max Lightning into the Urshifu could be enough to take it down. There's no screen support here from Donald's side of the field, so the Zapdos as well is going to struggle very much to deal with the Rotom Heat and get any like notable damage onto it. So you're really going to have to utilize the Urshifu if you are Donald. I think that's the big key here for you to maybe preserve it even for later. Get your Grimmsnarl back on the field. Maybe try and get screen support up and then keep that Urshifu for when that Rotom isn't Dynamaxed anymore.
Well, Markus is going to be going for the Dynamax in this game, hitting in turn 2 this time. No longer Regirock. Instead, it's going to be that Rotom. Quite wise, obviously, getting that Nasty Plot boost up. And this is where you can start dealing some really big damage. going for those max lightnings, max flares as well. When you're boosted up so much, it's going to be a lot of damage, and Urshifu has to watch out for those max lightnings. Scary Face coming out, going into the Zapdos, going to lower its speed by 2 stages, making it now at -1 thanks to the Airstream boost I had previously. Surging Strike's going to come out going into that Rotom. We've got the first critical hit, followed up by the second, and we know, of course, there will be a third, but it's not going to be enough to pick up a KO, taking it down to just below 50% damage. Going to need another Surging Strikes to be able to pick up a KO against Rotom if the Urshifu is able to survive out the next turn. Max Flare coming out though, targeting down into the Zapdos is not enough to pick up a KO, but I do really like this play by Markus. Setting up the Sun as well is going to stop the damage from those water type moves from being as effective in the next turn. Zapdos is going to bring the speed back up to neutral by going for a max Airstream into the Grimmsnarl, picking up the KO, putting itself back at a neutral speed stat, but that Urshifu is now at +2.
Yeah, and that's the worry, The Urshifu now does threaten the Rotom, but nice play here from Markus to do everything in his power to kind of decrease the offensive pressure of that Urshifu by getting the Sun up, and that will probably allow it to survive the next round of Surging Strikes if that's what we see. It'll be interesting to see what Markus brings onto the field next to partner this Rotom, because you're going to need something that really can outspeed the Zapdos. If you've got something in the back to come in and just get a bit of damage onto it, that's all you're going to need, and that threat's gone. And then Rotom with the Sun up, like you say, Lou, that support network that it's got through that Sun is going to be able to deal with the Urshifu this next time around, and the Urshifu's not half as effective under the Sun conditions as it has been, without it there. So Zapdos in a precarious position, but maybe you want to protect it if you got it, maybe preserve it, try and get a close combat onto the Kartana, but the Kartana coming out here is not the Pokemon that you really want to see, although the Urshifu, like you say, is going to be faster than it and will have the option to potentially go for close combat into it, but is it going to be enough to pick up the knockout? And if you do that, you're kind of ignoring the Rotom at the same time.
Exactly, and if you're Kartana, you have to worry about a potential Fire-type move coming out from that Zapdos as well, particularly in the Sun. I mean, Kartana can't survive Fire-type moves at the best of times, but in the Sunshine, it's certainly going to be a really formidable force for that Kartana. Rotom, however, of course, is going to have to watch out for the Surging Strikes from the Urshifu. Looking at the damage the first batch did, I don't think it's going to be able to pick up the KO, but we will find out. Going for the Surging Strikes, number 1 has connected, but looking at that damage, I think it is just going to fall short by possibly a few HP. It's very, very tense watching this HP bar go down, but Rotom is able to hang on and will be around to fire off a move going into this next turn. Kartana able to go for that Leaf Blade, however, straight into Urshifu, takes it down to the Focus Sash. So Urshifu, again, still able to hang on. Can go for a Surging Strikes in that next turn. We've already confirmed it is the fastest Pokemon on the field. Zapdos going for that Max Flare into the Kartana in retaliation and takes it down and off the field almost as quickly as it joined.
Yeah, nice getting the damage onto the Urshifu, but the Focus Sash there really coming in very useful and allowing it to stick around on the field, and that's a big plus for Donald here. So you do see him lose the Zapdos to this Rotom. The Rotom survival there from the Surging Strikes in the Sun is pretty key as well, but the fact that the Urshifu now sitting on +2, still on the field, still threatens a KO onto the Rotom the next turn, and potentially onto whatever comes in. At least big damage is a really nice play from Donald to put himself back into this, and he didn't lose his Dynamax this game as quickly as he did that game 1. He got some returns for it, which is always what you want to see and always a good thing as a player, and gotten into such a high kind of risk match. Like if you lose this one, then it's going to get very difficult. That's not what you want to even start to consider at this point of the tournament.
Exactly, and now Donald has the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon from the back and start maybe changing a few things up. Having access to Grimmsnarl, you can definitely start throwing a few tricks out there on the field, lowering special attacks with things as well, and trying to cause a few problems. But Tapu Fini joining the field here for Markus, going to be able to set that Misty Terrain up on the field, going to stop any potential sort of Will-O-Wisps or paralysis coming out from the Grimmsnarl here, using its prankster ability to set a few statuses around on the field. But now it's certainly a very interesting ball position, Lee.
Yeah, and you've got a really nice way to just remove the Rotom if you are Donald. You can sacrifice your Urshifu, just take it down with the Surging Strikes. With the problem is obviously with the final turn of its Dynamax turns, if it does go for the Max Guard here, your Unseen Fist ability doesn't actually break through the Max Guard, so there is a turn for the Rotom to maybe stick around a little bit longer on the field here, and then you could utilize your own Tapu Fini if you're Markus to go for maybe a Moonblast, take down the Urshifu, and then that's one less threat to think about, especially if you've got the Grimmsnarl to come back in for Markus as well.
Exactly. Well, Urshifu going to go for the Detect here, just preserving itself from any damage, keeping its speed up nice as well. As Rotom does indeed go for that Max Guard, as you mentioned, Lee. So really wise going for the Protect here on the Urshifu as well, as Grimmsnarl goes for the Light Screen. Just wants to help protect Donald's Pokemon from these two special attackers it's opposing. Tapu Fini goes for that Moonblast, hoping to catch the Urshifu out. If it had gone into that Max Guard, but Donald was wise to it, and now Rotom looking very, very scared at the moment. It can't, even if it wants to go for a Protect, it can't. Urshifu and the Unseen Fist ability can just break right through it.
Yeah, and this is the thing now. If you're Markus, do you really want to preserve your Rotom? How much do you want to preserve it? Is it pivotal in seeing out the rest of this game? Potentially, but probably not as useful as maybe you think. It's probably worth just letting it go down and bringing that Grimmsnarl in better health onto the field at the end of it. Like I say, letting the Rotom Heat go down. It's so low health at the minute. So we do see that actually happen, and it'll be interesting to see where the Finny goes. It has to go after the Urshifu, you would think, with that Moonblast.
Yeah, it needs to be able to remove it from the field, but instead going for that Muddy Water. Thankfully for Markus, manages to connect, going to remove Urshifu from the field and do a little bit of damage to that opposing Grimmsnarl with a critical hit as well, despite the Light Screen, and also gets that accuracy drop. That could certainly help Tapu Fini out in the next couple of turns from taking any potential Spirit Breaks, trying to lower that special attack. But Grimmsnarl able to connect onto Tapu Fini, does a decent chunk of damage and lowers the special attack. And if you're Markus, this is where I think you ought to be a little bit worried, because depending on what Donald's last Pokemon is, it could be very difficult for Tapu Fini to deal with. If it's something like that Porygon 2, which we can see it is, then Porygon 2 is always well primed to be able to live attacks, go for things like Recover, and can just start dealing away and chipping damage. Has got the attack boost this time, and although Tapu Fini might want to go for those Calm Minds, having something like Spirit Break there is just going to negate them every time. Yeah,
that's makes it very difficult to really deal with when you've got to contend with the Spirit Break as well. From Markus' side, it is going to go for the Moonblast now, but not going to be enough on that -1 after that initial Spirit Break. So Donald done all the right things here to set up a nice end game where he's going to be able to utilize this Porygon 2 to its fullest potential, get the Trick Room up now, and going to be able to just throw up big potential Thunderbolts or Tri-Attacks, whatever it's got access to. But again, the Grimmsnarl now going to be slower than it, and going to be able to at least slow it down a little bit further if that's what Donald wants to do. But it feels like he's set this game up, and it looks as though at the minute we're going to be going to a game 3, Lou.
Yeah, I mean, those Tri-Attacks can certainly be very, very powerful, particularly if they are pre-followed up, but that's totally not a word. But if, first of all, a Fake Tears connects onto that Tapu Fini and then followed up with a special attack, it's going to be able to deal a lot of damage, considering the opponent will now be at -2 special defense. Donald, unfortunately, unable to connect that first one as Porygon 2 set up the Trick Room, and this could have been a great position where the Tapu Fini would be at -4 special attack, but not to be. Instead, it's just going to be at -2 as Porygon 2 does go for that Tri-Attack. Of course, we can't get any secondary effects due to the Misty Terrain being in effect, but it does take a decent chunk of damage there. Tapu Fini going for the Calm Mind, boosting itself up to +1, now to neutral attack and special attack even, and -1 special defense.
Yeah, the initial Fake Tears miss was really punishing here, because like you say, if it was down to -4 special defense, that Tri-Attack would have probably put it in range for a Tri-Attack this turn to pick up the knockout. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It has allowed Markus a little bit of hope that getting a Calm Mind off, and that does give him a little bit more reassurance, but still going to be very difficult. He's going to have to start attacking at some point, and the problem with Porygon 2 that we always see is that it does have access to recovery, which nothing else on the field has access to at the moment.
Yeah, and also both of Donald's Pokemon are able to survive the Moonblast onslaught that the Tapu Fini is going for. So Tapu Fini, again, even though it's got the leftovers recovery, it's not going to be enough at this point to be able to counteract the combination of Spirit Break and the Tri-Attack from that Porygon 2. So Donald really able to kind of put himself into a good position to start countering through these Pokemon here on Marcus's side. Porygon 2 this time able to find itself on a mountain that it is able to climb and start picking away at the Pokemon on the opposing side of the field. So if you're Markus now, you might want to start thinking about your adjustments going into game 3, how potentially you want to try and replay through these games to try and put yourself in a more favorable winning position.
Yeah, and I think he makes some really good points there, Lou, like always. But I think the one thing that maybe Markus wants to really concentrate a little bit more on in game 3, it looks like it's going that way, is protecting that Kartana he let it go down so freely to the Zapdos, you know. The Max Flare coming out, taking it down, and he didn't really get a return on it. He got the Urshifu down to a nice low, you know, position in health, but we revealed the focus sash there, so it wasn't really getting a return in that situation. And we saw from game 1 how well Markus utilized the Kartana to deal with the Porygon 2, and without it here, it feels very difficult to really kind of come up against it. And Donald, you know, making that priority to get rid of the Kartana when he's got the opportunity to, knowing that he's got the Porygon 2 in the back to take advantage of and really utilize, it was a really nice play for him. But I think Markus needs to really be a little bit more careful with his Kartana, especially in front of the Zapdos. Maybe he falls back on that Reggie Rock again. It might be an option for him in game 3, but it's going to be something that Donald will have to keep in mind as well. If you do see the Reggie Rock come out, it's going to make it a very interesting game 3 nonetheless. But we are still in game 2 as we see a Muddy Water here from the Tapu Fini. Not going to be enough to pick up a knockout, and the Tri-Attack coming out from this Porygon 2 going to be enough to take finally down this Tapu Fini that's done such good work all game.
Well, speaking of fast pace, let's get into game 3 nice and quickly so we can see who is going to become the victor out of Donald and Markus in this set. It's going to be the Rotom and the Grimmsnarl leading out for Markus. So again, another change, but Zapdos and Grimmsnarl coming out here for Donald, sticking with that Zapdos once again. And it has been the Pokemon that Donald has liked to Dynamax very, very early on, trying to make sure that the offensive pressure is on the field right from the very beginning of each game. And I wonder if that is the same strategy he wants to go for in this game 3.
Yeah, you would imagine so, and I think with the when you've got the Rotom Heat on the field, there's not really a threat not to go for that Nasty Plot. You know, I think the Nasty Plot just makes a lot of sense here, and we saw how much work it put in game 1, so it puts a lot of pressure on Donald and makes him reposition as well. So I think, you know, that's what I would go for if I was Markus. Get my screen support up, light screen right now if you've got access to it, and then if you're Donald, I'd still hold off with the Zapdos. I think I'd wait, I'd try and stall out these potential Rotom turns if it goes for the Dynamax. You've got to think though, if it's taking a turn here to Nasty Plot, you've got a turn where it's not going to be Dynamax, then you can maybe get some big damage onto it. So that is the other option here if you're Donald. Try and get some big damage onto it early on, mitigate those attack boosts with something like Spirit Break, and then that might be enough to slow Markus and his Rotom down for the next few turns.
Well, third time in the set, we're going to see this Dynamax Zapdos coming out very, very early on in the game for Donald as well. Going to be able to apply a lot of pressure. Markus, however, going to go for a Dynamax of his own. We haven't seen any Nasty Plot coming out here from the Rotom Heat. And it's going to be, again, the Dynamax choice. I wondered if we were maybe going to shake things up a little bit here for Markus. But I feel like, actually, you know, Rotom is one of those Pokemon that can still apply a lot of pressure despite the Nasty Plot or not. And potentially Markus just wants to make sure that he has a Dynamax Pokemon a piece. Scary Face going to go down into that Zapdos, removing its speed spat by 2 stages here. And Rotom able to then fire off on Max Flare is going to be the faster, thanks to that Scary Face reducing it. Zapdos going to be able to take it really well, but critically, of course, setting up that Sun. That is going to help out those Max Flares going into the next turn.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention of note from Donald's side of the field is, you know, he has got the fake tears that he can take advantage of with that Grimmsnarl as well. He's actually been able to make a very good play here and remove the support network from Markus' side of the field, mitigating at least one of those speed drops that the Zapdos has just took through that Scary Face.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the Spirit Break coming out here as well from the Grimmsnarl, going to start lowering the special attack of that Rotom. So Donald really putting himself into a good position. He's sort of boosting his defenses by lowering the offensive pressure of the opponent's Pokemon. But like you said there, having that kind of fake tears combination is going to be phenomenal if he's able to execute it. But there is a challenge that Donald has to face, and it is that Regirock.
Here it is. It's come back onto the field to haunt this Zapdos from that game 1, but unfortunately it's not going to be able to Dynamax here. And that's probably a big kind of part of how well it was able to handle a Zapdos. It's still going to be able to do a lot of good damage, but it is going to be it has to be concerned about fake tears and a big attack from the Zapdos at the same time.
Well, no fake tears coming out. Instead, it's just going to be the Reflect. Max Flare going to come out into the Zapdos. Even with the Sunshine, Zapdos is able to take that and go for a Max Lightning and retaliation into the Regirock. This time, it is not Dynamaxed. Wow. It is, not enough to pick up the KO though, Lee, was it?
No, I don't think it picks up the... Ooh. Oh, has it? It's very close if it's not. I think it's just survived. No,
oh,
it's
no.
fainted. Sorry.
Did manage
Correction
to KO.
there.
Oh, the
that
pixels
is a huge critical
us.
hit. Yeah, a huge critical hit though, Lou. That is massive because that now takes away one of Markus's real ways to deal with the Zapdos, and now it becomes a lot easier for Donald to kind of close this one up. It's not over by any means, but at the same time, Kartana's got to feel very threatened here, especially behind the screen support from the Grimmsnarl that it's just set up to kind of further kind of support the Zapdos that Donald's got advantage of now, and the Dynamax form on his side of the field.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, that Zapdos kind of saying to the Grimmsnarl, hey, no fake tears. I'm going to crit the opposing Pokemon, okay? And that's exactly what it did. And, I mean, the Pixels kind of distract us for a little moment there. And it just shows, again, that was such a critical turn. The Regirock was going to be detrimental to Donald's plan. And being able to remove it from the field has put him at such a better position going into this next turn. Grimmsnarl setting up that light screen as well. Going to start protecting the Pokemon from any of those special type attacks. Seeing his Reflector's already up. It's going to be targeting down into the Grimmsnarl from that Kartana, doing super effective damage with the Smart Strike, does about 50%. Max Flare targeting into that Zapdos, of course, being slow thanks to that Scary Face, and Zapdos isn't going to be able to survive a third max move going into it. But I think it did a pretty good job removing the Regirock from the field. Of course, Kartana is still going to provide a little bit of trouble, though, for Donald, and he has to be careful that he doesn't allow that Kartana to pick up KOs and start rolling those Beast Boosts up and then doing even more damage through Donald's team.
Yeah, the Rotom here for Markus has done its job. You know, it's got a very good return, getting rid of the Zapdos, which is the one thing you want to remove to help that Kartana perform a little bit better. But like you say now, with the screen support that Donald has on his side of the field, it's going to make it increasingly more difficult for the Kartana to really get a hold of this match, because it's not going to get the damage that it needs onto the field. And especially if you double up into the Porygon 2 here, you're probably not going to be able to pick up the knockout while it Trick Rooms, and then it's just going to recover the following turn. And that leaves the Grimmsnarl to do whatever it wants, or potentially Donald to switch out the Grimmsnarl, or go for one of these other options that he's got here, like a Fake Tears.
Well, the Fake Tear is going to connect into that Kartana. Kartana going for the Smart Strike into the opposing Grimmsnarl is going to be able to get the KO and get its first Beast Boost of this game. Of course, Porygon 2, if it is going to follow up with a special move, whether it could be setting up Trick Room and then following up on the next turn, it needs to be enough to be able to pick up a KO against that opposing Kartana. But there has another problem it has to worry about. The Rotom has now gone for that nasty plot. It's going to be another force to be reckoned with. Porygon 2 is going to be able to go for that Trick Room, going to be the faster going into this next turn. But Porygon 2 is a Pokemon that is known for only really having single target attacks.
Yeah, and that's the issue here. You kind of, it's set the Trick Room up, it's got the speed control against, you know, the Kartana and the Rotom, but the problem is with that nasty plot going up from Markus's Rotom, it's going to be able to do a lot of damage now to both things on Donald's side of the field, regardless of the screen support that they've got. He knows as well, Markus, that this Urshifu on Donald's side is sashed as well, so you need to prioritize that. You need to double into that slot, and maybe if you do double into it, it's putting you in a vulnerable spot where you could potentially protect your Urshifu this turn and then take advantage of that. But we're not seeing that, as we just see a Shadow Ball from the Porygon 2, and it's very close.
Yeah, not enough to pick up the KO though. Thunderbolt going to come from the Rotom into that Porygon 2, able to take it as Urshifu follows up with a close combat into that Kartana and does remove it from the field, so he doesn't have to worry about the Beast Booster Kartana anymore, as it will shoot right back into its Pokeball. But this Rotom is certainly going to be an interesting Pokemon to have to deal with.
Yeah, but I think there's not many turns of the sun left in the field. If you're Urshifu, I think that's all you need to wait out on. And with the Focus Sash still intact, you're going to get at least 2 turns. I mean, what you could do potentially is just reverse the Trick Room here if you're Donald with the Porygon 2. You could attack as well with your Urshifu this turn, knowing that you've got the Focus Sash. It's a little risky. There's always a chance of a paralysis here. And then the next turn kind of clean up, knowing that you're going to outspeed the Rotom. So there's lots of options. It's very difficult for Markus to kind of come back from this point, especially with the Focus Sash. And that's the big key kind of item here that's making it very difficult for Markus to kind of get any kind of leverage here.
Yeah, that's very true. You can see the Focus Sash activating as well on the Urshifu, and it does just give Donald that second chance, second opportunity to go for a round of Surging Strikes. You can see the first batch coming out here, going to connect down into that Rotom, and with the low HP, it only takes one critical hit from the Surging Strikes to knock the Rotom out and take Donald forward as the victor of this set.